G'day. Welcome to part 7 of our discussion with Father Rod Bauer. Today we'll be looking at the future and what it looks like from his eyes. We've been through and we've looked at the past and the present and some really topical points in that. But how do you see the future for Darkinjung country? The next 20 years, what do you see?
I think for the future to be flourishing, it needs to be grounded in the past, and you've acknowledged this as Darkinjung country. So if we are to have a flourishing future, it has to be built on that foundation that this is Darkinjung country, and so our future needs to be informed by those songs and that respect for this place. People flourished here, and this is amazingly beautiful.
Beautiful.
You can see why people flourished here for tens of thousands of years. We can't flourish here unless we acknowledge that and work with local Indigenous people. We still, as European people, have a European ancestry. There's a sense in which we still, after 234 years, we still need to learn to live here.
Yeah.
We haven't learned how to live here yet.
We're not symbiotic yet.
And there's only one way to learn how to live here, and that's listen to the people who've lived here for thousands and thousands of, tens of thousands of years. So what's the future? Well, the future is mutual flourishing, with the people who have lived here. And unless we get that right, there'll always be something holding us back. And I used to get to spend some time with Year 11 and 12 students quite a lot, and I'm hoping to do a little bit more of that again soon. And these are just extraordinary people. There are some extraordinary young people. I think our future is actually very safe in their hands. I really do. And the sooner my generation gets out of the way and hands it over,
let them go.
Let them go, because they are highly engaged in the big issues.
So you were talking about the young people and how they're the future. One thing which is really key for them is climate change. How can you see their leadership, even at this young age, in climate change, and how that leadership may feed through for the next 20 years and what that's going to help us do?
Yes. I mean, this is the one big issue, really. If we don't get that one right, we don't get anything. It doesn't matter what else we get right. So what I hear from young leaders is the essential nature of keeping global heating under 2 degrees. And I am sure that this next generation will not allow the political shenanigans that has gone on over the last 20 years to happen. I don't think any political party will get away with that. Once they start voting, that's just not going to happen. Is it too late? We hope not. We hope not. So along with the political will and emerging technologies, I'm still incredibly hopeful that we'll be able to slow this down. But the young people that I meet with are also so socially aware, way more than I was at their age, socially aware of issues of inclusion and how society works best that everybody can flourish. So I am just so hopeful that there's a bright future for us, because I see it in the lives of our emerging leaders.
What about Australia as a whole? So we've sort of spoken about 20 years, and let's say our youth get the leadership right and they fix climate change. What's Australia going to look like in 50 years? How do you envisage that?
We have one of the most extraordinary, naturally beautiful places. That feeds our souls. We have incredible resources. We have hopefully an ongoing, stable political system. Hopefully it'll improve a little bit even.
Yeah.
We have emerging leaders. What's Australia going to look? Australia will be more diverse. I hope more compassionate than we have been over the last 10 or 15 years. And I believe, with all of those things coming together, we will be a place that flourishes, not only economically and socially, but I guess from my perspective, I want my grandchildren to live in a society that flourishes spiritually as well. My youngest granddaughter, statistically speaking, will live to 21, 24.
It's a long time.
That's over 100 years. A female child in Australia now statistically will live for 104 years. And I can't even imagine what that world will be like for her. I sit in some of our schools on speech days and see these marvellous little kindy kids come up, and I'm thinking, what do we need to give you that you can flourish in a world that I can't imagine? And I think the answer to that is the ability to learn, the ability to be flexible, the ability to engage courageously in the world around you, the ability to be spiritually aware. Those are the things that we need to give our kids.
Do you think we can learn to stop focusing on building our individual wealth here and now and understand that it's about trying to give to our children? I know that in my parents' generation, they were working to enable me to get an education, enabling me to live a good life job. Sometimes now I feel that a lot of people are doing it to buy that bigger house or to buy that bigger car, instead of focusing on the external, their community, their children, etc.
I think what we're seeing there is the death throes of the economic paradigm. If we look through history, there's been various paradigms or ways in which we understand our society and our world. There was the tribal paradigm, and it gave way in the West to the religious or Christian paradigm, and it eventually gave way through the Enlightenment to the political paradigm, when we had the isms emerged, and then post-war we really entered the economic paradigm. And I think that if we look back to the financial global financial crisis, we saw the cracks start to appear in the economic paradigm. And I think this kind of rush to grab more material things is part of the dying of the economic paradigm. The next paradigm, I think for the first time in human history, we actually know that we're moving out of one into the other. We can see it coming, whereas I don't think we've been able to see it coming before. The next paradigm is the ecological paradigm. It has to be. We can see that coming, and I think we'll get that. We'll start to understand that, and I think some of our young people already understand that.
Yeah.
We'll see things having to become more sustainable. We'll see a society that will no longer accept the obscene hoarding of wealth. There's an ethicist whose name escapes me just for the moment, but he says that everything that we have more than we need is stolen from the poor.
That's a very powerful statement.
I think we'll become a society that actually understands that we cannot continue to steal from the poor, because it's not either ecologically or socially or spiritually sustainable.
So we've spoken about Dukajung land, we've spoken about the climate and Australia. Now let's come back to your patch, the church. How do you see faith and the church into the future in the next 20 or 30 years?
I mean, the church has become much less a cultural institution. I mean, certainly when I was baptised in 1963, in February 1963, it was still considered that if you're an Australian citizen, well, I was a British subject in 1963 when I was born, that you were a Christian, that you belonged to a church even if you never attended. So there's a whole cultural system going on there. That no longer exists.
Yeah.
And I'm quite grateful that that no longer exists, to be honest. People, make choices about their spirituality now, whether they practice that or how they practice that. So the church, when I say the church, I mean the Christian church in Australia, which is very diverse, incredibly diverse. There's hundreds of churches, and as the mainstream denominations, Anglican, Catholics. The church taken up by Uniting Church now, Pentecostalism, they will become smaller numerically. There's no doubt about that. We're seeing that. We know where the graph goes on that.
Yeah.
So the church will be smaller. Pope Benedict said that he actually wanted the church to be smaller and poorer, and Pope Francis, of course, has carried on in that theme. But I think what Pope Francis has achieved is to encourage his church, the Catholic Church, but those of us who are affected by some of the things he says, not only smaller and poorer, but more engaged spiritually. And I think that's where we're heading. That really excites me. Some of the work that I'm doing within our organisation. Is to sort of encourage people to think spiritually, and to understand that we live in a universe that's constantly whispering the things of the Spirit into our souls. So I see that we have a future. Our future will be different, and in many cases, some of which we've touched on, I'm glad it'll be different.
Yeah.
But I see people not giving up their spirituality. They're giving up the trappings of religion. I think that's also a good thing.
Yeah.
And so we spiritual professionals, if you want to call us that, need to jump on board with that and see people that are really thirsting for meaning. Because that's what spirituality is essentially about. It's about meaning. It's about how we find meaning in our lives. So we are naturally seekers of meaning. All human beings are seekers of meaning. And churches that see that, engage in a healthy way in that seeking of meaning for people will be churches that will look different, but will continue to flourish.
So I'm hearing you're saying you're going to be more a service, like a consulting service, a service on spirituality.
I kind of shy away from that, service provider model, but an influence, and of course as a Christian priest, we believe that human flourishing comes from living in a certain way. We call that the way of Jesus, but it's the way of compassion and justice and service and love and joy and all of those things. So we other faith traditions will do it in their way, but for me, saying that it is the way of Jesus that we saw he lived. That enables us to flourish as human beings and to find the deepest meaning. And I believe if we keep on that path, there'll be so many others who want to journey that path with us. Not come and join our club, in that sense.
Yeah.
But to live lives in the world that create human flourishing.
Very good. Very good. To be able to talk with you about your history here on the Central Coast and your vision of the future, it's been invaluable. So thank you very much. One of the things we're really trying to do is allow the youth to realise that those people which they look up to are just normal people doing their bit for their community, and encourage everyone just to take that bit of time, whatever your bit of this community is, to take the time. It's the way that we own our regional identities. is to make sure we all participate with it and keep going forward. So thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's just been such a delight to be here.
It's
in
a
this
beautiful
space
place.
once again.
Yeah, you can definitely see why everyone loves the Central Coast.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for listening. That was part 7 of our discussion with Father Rod Bauer. Please hit like and subscribe and listen to the other podcasts if you haven't listened to them before. Thank you very much.